Yeah.
Gotcha.
Hi, Wongani.
Hello. All right. Very
I'm good. How are you?
well, thanks and yourself.
Okay, so I'd like to interview you on the topic of mental health of Chinese overseas students. It may take you about 10 minutes. Would you like to do this with me?
Sure, that's fine with me, man.
Okay, so just let you know, during the interview, you can always tell me to stop if we're talking something like that make you uncomfortable. Okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, so could you please tell me a little bit about yourself? Like how to define yourself?
Well, my name's Wongani Wellington Mataya, Malawian.
Mhm,
Uh, I would say recently migrated to Australia for work, but it's not like I haven't been here before. I
mhm.
studied here for I mean, in person for a year, online for another year, and then away from here for another year. So it's been an interesting experience, the relationship I have with Australia. But yeah, currently working as a therapy assistant and
Okay,
trying to make advancements in my field, if I'm being honest.
great. How do you think about Australia?
It's a very interesting country, isn't it, Australia? The culture,
Mm,
culture is so different here. Everything's just like you think you've seen the weirdest thing in the world, and then it becomes the next day and you'll see something even weirder. So
okay, I get it. So,
yeah.
as an assistant psychologist, among the Chinese international students consults you have contacted, do you think the psychological problems and needs they face are different from those of other international students or Australian domestic students?
Well, I mean, in general, I think every person's problems are different. I think
Yeah,
the community you come from, of course, has a big influence on that. Community being your culture, country, region, the language you speak, et cetera, et cetera. I
yeah,
think maybe it hasn't been through professional experience, but through personal experience, I have encountered um, different groups of people who have a variety of different issues, if I'm being honest.
yeah, yeah.
So, from my experience with anybody of the Chinese descent or from a Chinese cohort, it's more of I don't know, it's different from person to person. From the people I've
True.
interacted with, it's not as easy to kind of like break into a Chinese friend group or to get them to talk about their emotions, I would say. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very much from an outside perspective, of course. It's very
Mhm.
much a culture that is reserved to themselves a little bit. But that is nothing to say that amongst each other. When they're in a group together, they will open up to each other. You know, you'll
Yeah,
see
yeah,
some
I
things
get
that
it.
you didn't expect to see, and you find some people that you're that are very interesting and very open and very what you could say is left field of your expectations. So I think again it varies from person to person, but some of the psychological issues could go from maybe because of the fact that they're not as open and they don't talk as much about their emotions could lead to a lot of stress and or a lot of problems because they build everything up on the inside instead of letting it out. But that's just,
Yeah, yeah.
generalized. So,
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes Chinese students they just want to talk to some some else they're Chinese, you know. Yes, I agree with that. So what do you think are the reasons why Chinese international students refuse psychological help or feel hesitate to mental health services?
well, I don't know. That comes from sorry, that
It's
comes
okay.
from it could be a background thing. I don't think
Mm,
psychology in general or mental health and mental health issues have been something that's been highlighted until quite recently. I'd say
yeah,
maybe around 2015 going onwards that it became like a big thing to make sure that your mental health is okay and the awareness of mental health growing. So in places that are very traditional, and I'm only saying that because Africa is a very traditional place that hasn't accepted psychology or even mental health,
mm,
it could be something that's just in general neglected, and therefore when you get to like a Western country where everybody's all about talking about your emotions and you have to go see a psychologist or a therapist or the school counselor every month, it's not something that's easy to do.
yeah,
So I think you build up like a wall from
hmm,
like birth, kind of like you build your your level of tolerance for specific things, and you have the people that you want to talk to. And when somebody says, "Hey, how about you go talk to a random stranger about all the problems in your life?" It doesn't sound very appealing, you know. And
Yeah.
some people are open to it, but if you're a naturally reserved culture, or if you're a naturally stand by yourself culture, it's not something that's going to happen often. And then to another extent, I think maybe acknowledging the emotions as well is a little bit harder, because like if you're told to go to another country, shut down all your emotions and focus on studying, succeeding, making sure your parents are proud of you, or making sure that you don't let anybody down, it can be a little hard to say that you're going through something, because it can make you feel like you've failed what it is you were trying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I get that. I have to say I kind of have the same experience, like the things that you just talked about.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good. That means
And
I'm like, that means I get
yeah,
that.
yeah. When you're working, how do you handle Chinese international students who may have language or cultural barriers to accessing mental health services?
Well, here's the thing. I do believe everything is for everyone. I think if you can access it, there should be a method in which you should be able to access it. There's a language barrier. I think translators are a very important part of society nowadays, especially if you're an international being in a foreign country. I think Australia, luckily, is home to a large multitude of cultures, and therefore there's lots of opportunities to find people who can help the right people. And I
Yeah.
think just to make people more comfortable, um, for example, it's gonna sound like a crazy example, but like for example, to cut my hair, when I
Mm-hmm.
cut my hair, I go to an African barber because it makes
Yeah.
me feel more comfortable because
Yeah,
they know
yeah,
how
yeah.
to do my hair. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
same concept. Like if you come to me and I know nothing about Chinese culture, and I'm going to try
Mm,
and give you a lecture as to how Chinese culture is supposed to work, you're not gonna listen to me. It's not gonna work.
yeah.
It's gonna go in one ear and out the other ear. But if I'm telling you something from my professional experience, which could be psychology, mental health, counseling, or something like that, and then it's coming through a translator who's then putting it in the words that you understand best, it can be a little bit easier. The other ways to go around it is, if I'm not the right person for you, and I believe this is the same thing in every field, if you come to me for help and
Mhm.
you don't believe I can help you, I'd recommend you to someone else, because I do
Yeah.
think it's important for me to find the right person for you. So often in my field of work, therapy assistants, we get what is called a referral. You get a client. If the client doesn't like you, they can choose someone else. That's just a perfectly normal thing, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't think you're good for the client, you can also let your superiors know, and they can move them on to a better person. I think that's just something that's a part of the way I work. And I think that's
Mm.
something that's important in life, because I don't think there's a perfect match for everything and everyone. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes you want to do your best to find the right people, whether that's finding a Chinese psychologist in Australia, which is not
Yeah. Yeah.
easy, I understand, but that could be one way to do it, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I think so. Maybe they can go for looking like they can go looking for some psychologists who have like same background with them. As you just said, Chinese psychologists, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can find them, I do think that they are available. I think Australia is multicultural and diverse enough to find them, if I'm being
I
honest.
think
But
so. Okay.
also,
Um,
people who aren't here, like let's say consistently, because these are students, right? If you can get the help while you're back home, a lot of psychologists are willing to continue having that connection, even if you can't meet them every week. This Zoom call exists for a reason. So I'm in Melbourne, you're in Sydney, right? So it's that same.
yeah. So do you have any special treatment for them?
I don't know about special treatment. I think psychology itself is a special treatment. I think psychology is or psychological services are very diverse in the ways at which you can approach a problem. I do think it's a scenario of making sure you identify all the issues, identify where the issues come from. Doing your research is a very important part of psychology. If I go into this meeting blind, for example, somebody
Mm.
says they have stress, my brain's going to put them in the stress box, and not acknowledge everything else. But stress is something that comes from multiple different places. If I hear they're a student, then I'll be like, okay, it could be assignments, deadlines, could be workload, etc., etc. If there's family issues back home, that's another
Yeah.
box. If there's cultural issues that affect everything, that's a very big box that nobody could ever understand ever. Right? But like that box is probably the one that has a lot of um subconscious pressure, which is like they don't think about it often, but it lingers in the back of their head. You get what I mean? Because like for
Yeah.
example, I know I want to succeed and I know I want to do well in life, but like in the back of my head, there's like my dad's voice saying, "You better not waste all my money." You get
Totally get that.
yeah. So it's like you're just trying to do your thing, but um your background, it does you can never get rid of it, right? It
Yeah.
stays with you until the day you die. So you got to make the most of what you can do. Special treatment, I'd say do your research. Number one, ask as many personal questions as possible if they're willing to answer. Find out what's happening, aspects of people's lives. Find out what's happening at home, where it
Mm.
comes from, find out what their culture is like, whether it's strict, whether it's lenient, whether they're completely different from their friend group, their cohort, or whether they're exactly the same. It gives you this kind of like basis to go forward on, because I can always link back. I'm like, oh, this person has a very, very small friend group, comes from a background where they weren't allowed to see many people growing up, and et cetera, et cetera. It all starts to make a chain that makes sense. So,
True.
yeah, man, just, gather as much knowledge as possible. In terms of other ways to do it, can't think of much if I'm being honest. As I said, psychology is also a pretty general field. We deal with a lot of people every day. So me personally, I deal with one client at a time, but I know that it can be rough for some psychologists out there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so like I think this question is a little bit similar with the special treatment. So do you have any specific resources or support system you can recommend for Chinese international students seeking help with mental health issues?
um, I
Maybe,
think
oh, sorry.
sorry, it's okay. It's okay. Follow up.
I think the university, they can really provide some useful resources for them. So
100%. You
yeah.
know what? A lot of things that people maybe not people, maybe myself neglected while I was in university was not being able to join a community, because I was there during COVID. So it's like we were in lockdown. The opportunity to like be in a
Yeah.
society, it wasn't there. So um, I don't know if it would have made my life better. I don't think I'm that type of person. But I always recommend to people is, if you don't know anybody here, and if you are having a tough time making friends in class, the communities are there everywhere. For most schools
Yeah,
and
yeah.
most just areas in general. Like, for example, I think Noble Park is a very large Sudanese area. Springvale is a very large Vietnamese area. Clayton is like student central, right? This is just Melbourne I'm talking about, right? So you'll know there'll be people of similar issues in areas, but in schools in general, they have societies, clubs, whether it's due to interests, whether it's due to your cultural background. I think Monash had a Korean club, dance club, music club. That's so many different like variety of spectrums. I didn't join any. That's on me, right? But there was definitely an African
Mm,
society somewhere. And I think if you have trouble making friends and stuff like that, if you go to that community, the community doesn't exist with nobody in it, right? So there are people there easier who make life a little bit easier for you to join. And I think for schools especially, it's one way to do it. Every school as well has a counselor.
mhm.
At least they should have a counselor. If they don't have a counselor, they need to reevaluate what they're doing at school. I know school counselors may seem like they don't care because they deal with a lot of students and they have a very small amount of time to deal with them,
Mhm.
but they take issues very seriously. It's not just a job to them. For you to become a school counselor, you have to go through a very large, long, grueling process. So when you're
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
they're taking you serious. They're doing their best to take you serious. It's just that sometimes they may not have time. And it's just like friends. It's just like people in your lives. Just like everybody. No, but not everybody has all the time in the world to bend to everybody's will, except me. I have all the time in the world, at least in the evening. Yeah, but like in school, I think that's the best way to do it. And in general, other places, just look online. When you do your research, you'd be surprised what you can find online. There's a lot of free psychological services. There's a lot of some of them are paid, of course, but like at a cheap rate. You can check for a register for the type of psychologist you're looking for, whether you're looking for a psychologist with a Chinese background. I believe there's a what is it called again? I think I had it
That's
written
okay.
down.
Yeah, that's
With a
okay. So,
yeah.
I've looked up the homepage, I mean the website of
Mhm,
Sydney University, and they do provide lots of resources to help students to look
mhm,
after their mental health. And
mhm,
also there is an activity which is really interesting. It's called
mhm,
therapause, something like that. Just
mhm.
some dog dog therapy.
Oh yeah.
People just bring dog, and students can come around and pet them, just
Exactly, because
enjoy the vibe.
you don't have to
Really
talk to a dog.
interesting.
The dog just has to be there and you feel
And
better.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes small activities can be really helpful also.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in general, I think just keep yourself occupied, Like
Hmm.
when you're sitting around doing nothing, or like even when the semester ends and you've submitted everything and you feel like you have that freedom, but then you stay inside your room all day watching TV shows, it can get like leaving yourself with your thoughts alone can be a lot. It can be it can take over you more than you think it can. So I
Yeah,
think just doing something, trying to do something every day, whether it's going for a walk, going to the gym,
true.
talking to friends, meeting up, doing a board game night or something like that. If you
Yeah,
have no
yeah,
friends, just going outside, going like explore. It's one of those
yeah.
things that
Going
people
outside, enjoying the sunshine, talking to people,
exactly
doing
people think it takes
exercise.
people think it takes money to do everything in Australia. Not everything. Not
Yeah, true.
everything.
Yeah, like
There's a lot of free
I
stuff
like
that you
going to park. Yeah,
exactly
it is.
right.
Yeah,
Like to watch people. Yeah, I go to so there's this place in Melbourne Central. It's like steps. Sometimes I just go to
yeah.
sit on the steps and watch all the people that like go by and then like but then I'm a psychology nerd and that's I do a lot of weird stuff.
But that can be really helpful. Yeah.
Me, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing and giving advices today. And I really hope you can have a good life and a good career. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.